Well, the Fremantle Dockers have defeated Essendon by 41 points at Optus Stadium in Perth. It was not a terrible performance by Essendon, but at the end of the day, they weren't quite good enough. We're going to get into everything that happened in this video right now. So this was one of those matches where you're kind of happy with the effort. It certainly wasn't a terrible performance at all. But it was also one of those matches that we were never, ever going to win. It was just one of those matches where the margin just gradually crept out from 15 to 20 to 30 and ended up being 41. We were never really in a position where we were threatening to win the game. We did play pretty well in the second quarter. We did get back into the game a little bit, but even then it was never to the point that you really thought we were going to win the game. There were some pretty good performances on the night. Certainly first game of Vigo Visentini up against one of the best players in the competition in Luke Jackson, a genuine A-grader. Have to be really happy with that from, the first gamer. He had 15 possessions and battled manfully all night. Pretty tough as nails player, I thought. Laid a really good tackle at the end of the second quarter, which might have been a goal-saving tackle. Looked like he got hurt, and I think we all had our hearts in our mouths there for a minute. But at the end of the day, he was able to resume and ended up playing a pretty serviceable game. But at the end of the day, we just weren't quite good enough. We're just too undermanned. And I think if you just look at the way we play, we probably just rely, and this is probably a reflection of just the skill level more than anything, we probably just give that one too many handballs, that extra handball you don't need, rather than going a little bit more direct. And that little extra little bit of class that we just don't quite have, especially coming out of the back line. Just that little bit of class. You could see with Fremantle playing, the best player on the ground was probably Caleb Serong. Just, genuine superstar and one of the best players in the competition. Luke Jackson, of course, as well. So they've got two A-graders, three A-graders if you count Brayshaw. But I think Serong and Jackson probably are their two best players. And they were the two best players on the night. And we just lack that class, that overall class just across the ground to be able to compete with some of these sides. We were okay. Look, it wasn't a terrible performance by any stretch of the imagination, but too many little turnovers from when we put ourselves under pressure. And I think that's probably still the most frustrating thing is we put ourselves under pressure. We seem to just want to handball out of trouble. Once again, we had a lot of handballs today. We didn't have quite one-to-one, and I'll get into the stats in a little bit, but we still had a lot more handballs as a percentage of our total possessions than Fremantle did. And a lot of that is you see through the centre of the ground and even coming out of the back line, we just try to handball to the next person. Like it's not my problem, here, have it. Like it's a little hot pill or something. Not my problem, pass it on to the next player through the middle of the ground. And it's just that extra possession. I reckon we sort of take that one extra possession in a chain of possessions that we don't need. And maybe that's a reflection of being under pressure. The players that are just good enough can sort of break a tackle and kick long down the line because they're capable of doing it. We sort of haven't got those sort of players, so we end up sort of just handballing to, a stationary player, things like that. But at the end of the day, 41 points, Fremantle with a better side. We're going to go through what happened in each of the four quarters. If you like this channel, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do so. It will ensure that you never miss a video. It doesn't cost any money, and it only takes 1 second to do so. I'd appreciate it if you could click that subscribe button right now. So the first quarter started off with 2 metre Peter getting the first goal of the game, and he continued his good form. He's kicked 19 goals this year, which is as many as he's kicked over the last couple of years, and we've still got quite a lot of matches to go. So he continues to be an important player for us this year, surprisingly so. I don't think he was in our plans necessarily at the start of the year, but obviously with circumstance and injuries, he's grabbed his chance and he's holding on to it and being a valuable member of the team. Jye Bolton evened up the scores. He got progressively more annoying as the match went on, Jye Bolton. He certainly had a bit of a bee in his bonnet, and I think he needed a bit of a clip around the ear in the second quarter. But he got him on the board in the first quarter. Kako kicked a nice little goal for us to give us 2-1. Josh Treacy kicked Fremantle's second goal before Luke Jackson kicked their third goal, and they went into quarter time 3-2. Essendon's performance was pretty good. I thought we were in the game at this point, but you were just sort of waiting inevitably for that point where Fremantle were going to put the foot down and put the difference on the scoreboard. Caddy did a couple of really nice things in that first quarter. He had 2 great field kicks. One of them was I think it was definitely for the first goal that 2 metre Peter got. It was a beautiful field kick, which you can't really teach. It was just a beautifully skilled kick. And he had another one which resulted in a behind to Essendon to the player who kicked it. I can't remember who it was. If you can remember in the comments, let me know. But he had two great field kicks. I thought Blackiston did okay in that first quarter. I was always watching him, how these rookies go, or the first and second gamers after a bit of an average sort of debut last week. He had a couple of good spoils, which I thought was a good sign. Going into the second quarter, it started to get a little bit ugly early with Fremantle kicking the first 4 goals. Luke Jackson, Serong, Frederick and Murphy Reid got goals before Archer May, in a really pleasing sign, kicked the first goal of his career. They all got around him, which was a good sign. Lowell got another one back, so it was 4-2 before Treacy got another one to make it their 5th goal of the game. We were able to finish off with the last 2 goals of the quarter to Caddy, who took a great mark, and Dersma. So Caddy, whilst he only sort of hit the scoreboard for the 1 goal, certainly was getting involved. Big mark. He was going for torpedo kicks from the back line when he was in that situation. He had a couple of nice goal assists. He was getting involved, and that's all you can really ask. Obviously, had a poor game against Geelong last week. And I think when that happens, you just really want to get involved. One of the pleasing signs, at least to the end of the second quarter, was the fact we'd had 9 marks inside 50 to 1. And we were actually holding our own with a lot of the statistical categories. But clearances at half-time were 18 to 16. Now, the problem is we got absolutely obliterated in this particular area after half-time. In fact, after half-time, we lost the clearances 26 to 10 so it was 44 to 26 across the whole game. 26 to 10 after half-time, after basically 50-50. It was 18 to 16 in Fremantle's favour at half-time. So that was really disappointing that we really fell away in that area, and Serong really just started to get on top around the middle of the ground in particular. And that was really where Fremantle ended up putting the game away, which was in the third quarter, where they really started to assert their dominance across the middle part of the ground. We didn't kick a goal in the third quarter. The effort was still there, but at the end of the day, we just weren't able to go with them. Treacy, Serong, Luke Jackson and Brayshaw, so 3 of their best 4 players and then their best forward in Treacy, all hit the scoreboard for a 4-0 third quarter. And that clearance dominance that they were just able to start to put onto the scoreboard, and they were just able to also just get into their inside 50. We had a very, very low number of inside 50s for the match. In fact, we only ended up having 34 for the match, which is pretty close to a season low for us. Fremantle ended up having 57. It's not always about how many inside 50s you get, it's about how you get it in there, but we just weren't moving it quick enough to get it in there with any real, urgency or any real impact, I guess you could say, to have it on the scoreboard. And at 3-quarter time, Fremantle led by 37 points. And with their dominance across the middle of the ground, the match was really as good as over. The fourth quarter kind of just petered out. There was 3 goals each. May got the first goal of the quarter for his second of the match, so it's good to see him at the scoreboard for 2 goals. Voss and O'Driscoll got goals for the Dockers. Lowell got his second goal, so once again, good to see him holding his spot in the team and doing okay. For Gresham kicked a nice little snap, and Frederick finished off the quarter with a goal to Fremantle. They kicked a few behinds in the last quarter after barely missing for the most of the match before that, and they ended up outrunning us and, in the end, pretty comfortable 41-point winners. So how did a lot of the key numbers look in the game? Well, disposals, Fremantle had 27 more disposals. They had 225 kicks, 167 handballs. We still have too much of a proportion of handballs to kicks. We had 190 kicks and 175 handballs, and that only resulted in 34 inside 50s. As I said, I just think we probably take that extra handball option. Nothing wrong with having a handball game if your game is geared around that, but when it's geared around just giving it off to the next player because they're in trouble and you don't want it, it's never really going to work, and we just didn't get it inside our forward 50 enough. One good thing is we did manage to take a lot of marks inside 50. I'll get to that in a minute, from only 34 entries. Clearances, as you can see, we got dominated in clearances, 44 to 26. Most of that big difference was after half-time. We were obliterated after half-time by about 3 to 1 in clearances. And it's normally an area that we're okay in. We can't afford to really lose, that substantially in that area. We had 240 uncontested possessions to Fremantle's 251. Contested possessions were also pretty even. that wasn't a huge part of the game. Fremantle had 45% time in possession. They had a few more marks than us, but not substantially. Marks inside 50. So 13 marks inside 50 from only 34 inside 50 entries. So that's very efficient. It is very efficient. But at the end of the day, 34 inside 50 entries is just not enough. But certainly 13 marks inside 50, one of our best performances of the year. But just having a look at how some of the individual players went. Well, we only had 2 players that scored over 100 ranking points. Caldwell and Darcy Parish. Caldwell had 32 possessions, 125 ranking points. Darcy Parish also had 31 possessions and 115 ranking points. He had 20 handballs, Darcy Parish, 11 kicks and 20 handballs. So maybe that was symptomatic of our handball game. But certainly Parish, his 3rd game back now, that was certainly his best game of the 3 that he's played since he's come back. Archie Roberts had 25 possessions, 84 ranking points. I thought he was pretty solid in defence. Nick Martin had 21 possessions, 93 ranking points. Didn't impact the game. I still think he's spending too much time in the back line. Every time I'd sort of see him get a possession down there or see him get the ball, he was across half back. And I get it. You want good players down there distributing the ball. But I'd just rather see him in the forward line because he always kicks goals down there. Laverty battled hard. Had the 18 possessions and 9 marks. Look, we have to have him in the team at the moment because there are no other options. When we start to get reinforcements back in 2 weeks' time, there's a likelihood he'll be out of the team, I would say. Caddy kicked a goal, and as I mentioned earlier, I think he tried hard. I think he impacted the game in terms of not necessarily on the scoreboard, although he did have a couple of goal assists, but he took a big mark, and you could tell he knows he belongs. And it was one of those games. He kicked one, but he had a few other things gone his way. He could have kicked 3 or 4. It's just one of those games, and he just ended up kicking the 1 goal. And he did a couple of really nice things. Took a couple of big contested marks, and basically, I would say, had an impact. Archer May had a very good game. I thought 83 ranking points and kicked 2 goals. Had 14 possessions and 6 marks. So he and Caddy down there will be a formidable duo, I think, for years to come. Setterfield was in the wars in this match. He got knocked around a couple of times, had the 17 possessions. Angus Clark had 21 possessions and battled away. Pryor, I thought, struggled tonight. I think Pryor has been a little bit of a quiet achiever over the last 2 months where he's kind of just done his job, but he really got exposed a couple of times tonight and really had a bit of an average game, in my opinion. Visentini, 17 hit-outs, 15 possessions, first game. Look, you're not going to expect him to have beaten Luke Jackson, who's one of the best players in the competition. I mean, Jackson had 186 ranking points and was one of the best games of the year. You don't expect that when you're getting thrown to the wolves. But really, I thought he did what he had to do against a dominant opponent. Hobbs still, I'm not sure why Hobbs is back in the team. His kicking is just not good enough. He just needs to be able to kick 50 metres. If you can't kick 50 metres at this level, then I don't really think you should be in the team. He had 16 possessions and sort of battled away, but didn't really have an impact on the game. McGrath did what he always does, has his 20 possessions across half-back and, had your heart in your mouth a couple of times where he sort of turns the ball over. Merritt, once again, a little bit down. He had 17 possessions, 92 ranking points from 17 possessions. So a pretty efficient game in terms of, his impact, but probably just didn't get the ball enough. They're really throwing him in different positions now. Like everywhere you look, he's in the back line or he's not necessarily in the middle of the ground. So it'll be interesting to see what we do with Merritt going forward. Peter Wright as well, 1 goal, 1. Did what he has been doing for most of this year, which is chip in and get a goal and have a serviceable game. Kako kicked a goal, as did Gresham. Both didn't have huge impacts on the game. Lawal kicked 2 goals from his 5 kicks, so it's good to see him hit the scoreboard. I still think he looks pretty raw, and I reckon when we start to get some of our players back in a couple of weeks, he could be spending some time in the reserves. Dersma got subbed out with a bit of another soft tissue injury, so we'll see how that flares up during the week. The hamstring tightness is the official explanation. Whether he's actually pulled the hamstring or whatever, I'm not quite sure. Zach Johnson, after 29 possessions last week, only had the 9 this week, and one of his probably his quietest game since he's had his debut. Blackiston had the 11 possessions and a couple of good spoils. I'm glad that he retained his spot in the team. I thought he had a much better game than what he did last week. Look, he was still fairly average, and he's on his P plates, I guess you could say, even at the age of 26. But they did experiment with him in the back line in the VFL. So if they're going to do that, they've got to persist with it. They can't just throw it all on him and blame him. He's never played in the back line before. He's a ruckman. So I thought his second game was definitely better than his first game. Perkins came on as the sub and didn't really have much of an impact. Either did Matt Guelphy. So I think our two best players were probably Jye Caldwell and Darcy Parish. Let me know what you guys think. Well, I'm going to leave it there. Another loss to Essendon. It's 4 losses in a row now, so we've slumped to 6 wins and 8 losses. We've got some reinforcements coming back after the bye before we play the Gold Coast Suns here in Melbourne. We're a big chance there. Look, there's always a chance against Gold Coast in Melbourne. I don't care how they're going. Richmond beat them, remember? So you never know. We're definitely a chance to get back on the winners list. But what we do need is we really need to start to get some of our players back, and it looks like we're going to get 3 or 4 of them back for our next game. So I'm going to leave it there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, go Bombers.